Good morning, afternoon, evening, wherever you're checking in from. This is Tarly Live, and we are live on YouTube today. We are live with my co-host Drake, LaLa Gardens, and Wendy from Sunnabis today. We are going to be talking about Jadam, KNF, and labs. We've got side-by-side studies we're going to be talking about. We've got all kinds of stuff we're going to be jumping into. So if you think somebody needs to learn this information, or you think somebody might want to hear about this, please share this out and please subscribe today, because we're going to be doing a lot more like this. So welcome everybody. Thanks for being here. Should we start this off with a dab and a bong rip, whatever you're going to hit?
I sure think we should.
Okay. What's LaLa puffing on?
Joint.
Oh, awesome.
I put some, because I'm really, my weed is usually get a little bit not so uplifting, so I mixed some Honduras in it today, and we're gonna hope for a nice, yeah.
Beautiful, beautiful. Is Wendy puffing on anything today?
Yeah,
or is she taking it easy?
I am. You guys can't see me. I apologize. Humboldt County Internet, if you have followed me on anything in the last year, you'll know is hit and miss. So today is a bit of a miss for video, so we're just going with audio. And I'm also in the midst of homeschool with my children today, which I find that when I start to puff on much, I am not the best homeschool teacher. So I'm a lot more fun, but we get a lot less done. So we're trying to get dialed in on our program a little bit here. So I'll wait until after 4 o'clock today.
Beautiful.
Completely understandable. So LaLa, what should we talk about labs first thing? Like I have my labs going.
I think we should, yeah. I think we have a little bit of our lab ongoing story to tell
and stuff.
It'll be a nice way to.
Oh, also, if you're turning in live, make sure you have it on top chat and not live chat, so you can pay attention to everybody's conversations.
Flip that around and make sure you're on live chat, not top chat.
Live chat, not top chat. I'm sorry. For some reason, I just got some feedback and it threw me off. Just a minute. Hold on. I've got something going on in the background. Okay, I got it fixed. Popping out chat now. Here we go. I want to say hello to everybody out there real quick. Here we go. Red River, thanks for joining us. How are you today? Light Up, you are always here. Thanks for joining us and all your support, everybody. How are you doing? Amadeus is out there. Woo, woo, woo. What's everybody smoking on? Say hello to one another and introduce yourselves. And where are you checking in from? That'd also be nice to know where you're checking in from today. And if you are interested in growing KNF or Jadam, what type of style are you growing and how are you growing? And are you growing in a tent or are you outdoor growing? I'd really like to know that today about you. And also, if you're tuning in after the live, please leave a comment down below and let us know. So I'm going to take a dab and let you start, LaLa, and talk about labs for a minute. Go ahead.
Okay. So last week we kind of I had a little bit to show on rice water that had gone a little bit far. I wouldn't call it bad necessarily because there's just gradations of quality. I felt it had gone towards the yeasty side of things. That brought a little bit of the cheesy smell. And so I went ahead and made my lab out of it anyway. So this is and it was made with milk that was expired and also organic, yes, and skim, which I don't usually use. I like to do cheese, so I go with the whole milk. But so this is it. And interestingly, the curd has fallen to the bottom. I don't know if that's because of the low fat or because of the fact that it was older. And then there's a little slight film on the top. And if you look at the top of those bubbles, it's starting to get that yellow color that was originally in the rice wash. So you can kind of see how what you're doing when you're inoculating is it's a population that you're capturing. And
do you want to hold that up again? I'm sorry. Do you want to hold that up again? I got you highlighted now. There you go.
So, so you're basically growing, from the very beginning, you're setting into motion the population that's then going to be enhanced by putting it in with the milk. So it is important. And I just wanted to show you the things that I will use this like with my odor mitigation, but I'm not going to probably use that one for ingestion. Wendy, how do you tell me how you use labs and if you have any kind of supporting or anything to add?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's funny you say you use whole milk because I have found that when I use whole milk, I do not get a good collection. I have a hard time with the separation. Usually that cream will rise to the top and create sort of a cap that doesn't seem to allow the gas exchange properly. And so I've only tried it a couple of times and I found that, if it didn't work twice, I'm not going to go keep trying after it, especially when other ones work so much better. So for me, skim milk has worked amazingly well. 2% is usually what I use just because I like the cheese off it also. And I like the flavor of the cheese that has that little bit more fat in it than the skim milk does. But I've gotten great cheese off the skim milk too. And I've never had mine sink like that, but I did have once it turned into yogurt, which I thought was incredibly interesting, super delicious, but it made me a little anxious because I didn't really know why that happened or what was going on in there. So that got fed to the chickens and the dogs, which loved it and never got sick. So I assumed it was probably okay. And I started, of course, with very, very, very limited amounts. I think they each got like a teaspoon. And, I watched for a good 2-3 days to make sure that nobody was going to get ill from it. But also, again, it was something, and I tried it myself because it smelled good. And I trust my nose a lot. If something smells bad to me, I'm not going to ingest it because that's my body saying, no, that's not going to work well for us. So since it smelled good, I wanted to try it, but I wasn't going to go whole hog and actually eat a bunch of it. So, but yeah, in general, and then what I use labs for, human health, definitely. So I don't take it daily anymore, just because I'm not that mindful, honestly. I would take it daily if I could remember and put it into part of my regimen. But especially if I have any gastrointestinal issues at all, if I eat foods that I feel might interact poorly with my system, I'll take LAB beforehand. The animals all get it in their water, especially I'm not really doing it anymore, but I've been breeding French bulldogs for a really long time.
Cool.
And when they're puppies, as you wean them onto hard food and off of mama's milk, they almost always get runny stool and it's really gross. And I found that if you add lab to the water when you're doing that and to the food, it never happens. And even now, if the dogs get into something funky and it gives them diarrhea or something, you can put lab in their water and it instantly clears it up. It's crazy how quickly it works. Yeah. My mom has a black Labrador and he has all kinds of yeast and fungal skin issues. He's an absolute mess. And so I finally got her giving him LAB too. He's also on a new medication. So there's 2 variables there. We don't know which exactly is working really well, but his hair is coming back in. The mange is going away. His hot spots are going away. His yeast is getting better. I'd like to, of course, contribute it to the LAB, but the reality is I can't say that for sure. So,
right.
And then in the garden, I'll be honest, I don't really use lab out there.
Yeah, me neither. Yeah, interesting.
Yeah, LAB is ubiquitous everywhere. There's lactobacilli in the soil, in the air, in our water. It's naturally occurring. So creating a higher concentration of it, I don't feel is necessary. It's the same reason why I don't use products in general that contain trichoderma, because trichoderma is ubiquitous in our soil more. It's already there in balance.
And it's a high fungal eating fungus. So you really don't want it in with any of your collections. It's called
exactly. It's called a non-discriminatory. It'll eat everything. Yeah. So for me, again, I'll focus on things that are just going to be anti-pathogenic and things that are going to be adding beneficials rather than something that can attack my beneficials as well. Unless I have a problem, like, if I had a huge outbreak of fusarium or something that I had confirmed with my microscope, I might go ahead and do a high dose of trichoderma. But now, that's actually not even really true. That's something I would have done previously, but now I wouldn't. Now I would load it with IMO, right?
Exactly.
So as we learn and
diversity is queen, as we always are reminded. So
exactly.
True. Oh, I love
it. And as we learn and grow and kind of scale our education and our SOPs and our methodologies, we find things that work better than other things. So IMO is amazing.
Always updating. We're going to have to delve into some IMO stories, I think, because I am going to want to talk to you about some living soils and the incorporation and how important these IMOs are when you're soil building. So I'm really excited to talk
Yeah.
about that today. But Tara, you want to share your ginger bug with us, and let's do a little.
Yeah, I want to take a drink of that. Thanks. But I was also showing you earlier about my IMO that I was doing. I didn't want to interrupt you guys when you're
let's go there.
talking. Thank you. Yeah.
Which
I
is
got
a
you,
type
girl.
of an IMO collection.
Okay, so one thing I did have a comment. There's a lot of new listeners out there, and thank you for correcting me on that, Wendy, because we have a lot of new listeners out here in chat. And I think for a little bit of while, we should talk and not use so many acronyms. I was going to suggest that maybe today. So labs, you guys, please go ahead.
Lacto acid bacillus.
There we go. And this one was made with whole milk. And you can't see at a certain angle. These lights are terrible in here. There you go. You can kind of see. And then this one over here was made with coconut milk. Same day, same times. I let this one go a little bit longer over here with the whole milk, I think, than maybe I would have, because it actually separated out very nicely yesterday. I just wanted you guys all to see it.
I love
this
the color.
Coconut one separated out a lot more today. I am not crazy about the whey smell and the milky smell. The coconut one is like way more up my alley. However, I love milk. I drink a lot of milk. So I'm new to this. So teach me about these things, guys. And I appreciate you being here today. And thank you for joining me.
Thank you for having us. I'm pretty excited about it. Yeah, I feel like a shortcut to sort of becoming friends with your indigenous microorganisms and your lactobacillus is really to use the body, not only in smelling and seeing and that, but also in imbibing and tasting and taking and drinking a little bit of your own lab, which I think you're getting ready to do, Tara, right? And
yeah, I actually am. I'm going to try it. I'm going to try the coconut one. I'm going to try the coconut one because and I am going to try it in my hair.
Perfect. Wendy, have you ever used it in your hair or in your laundry
hair.
or that sort of thing? Do you have any sort of uses for lab that are outside of the box a bit?
You know, I hadn't even thought about putting it in my hair, but I kind of am intrigued on the idea. My brain immediately.
Your skin with it?
So the skin. Okay, so I do have to say that at Chris's class this last year in Boise, there was this lovely lady there named Noni, and she has a skin. And it's not skincare. She's a soap line. Actually, have a bar of it I have to grab because I can't remember the name of it. And I do want to actually give her a shout out because I was very, very skeptical. She has this amazing handout all about our skin biome and how we use all these soaps and shampoos and it strips it and all of that I understand. And generally I'm the weird person who, when I'm in the shower, like I don't have bad body odor really. So I don't use a lot of soap.
I don't use any. I don't like soap.
I use water. I use, some scrubs now and then, but in general, I'm farming in the spring and summertime, a lot of times I'll actually go ahead and soap my feet because otherwise they get really caked and brown and it just kind of gets nasty. And I'm not a troll, so,
we're called scraping at that point. I have to do some foot scraping during the summertime.
The other thing that Wendy, though.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, so her company is called Clearwater Cultures, and these bars of soap are $15. And I was like, that is ridiculous. It's soap. I mean, give me a break. I was like, there's no way. I'm like, that's silly. And I had helped Chris a bunch during class, so he bought me some, and I got home and I used it. And I was like, oh my gosh. I cannot believe it. Like, I don't use soap. My skin was so incredibly soft and hydrated. My mind was absolutely blown. And she uses LAB in this soap. She uses labs and I mean, it has all kinds of other medicinal herbs and wonderful things, but it's not actually a lab. It's probiotic cultures. She uses goat milk kefir, water kefir, kombucha vinegar, and the SCOBY, beneficial microorganisms, and then a bunch of waxes and oils and things. And it literally changed the way that I think about soap. And I was like, wow, okay,
that's awesome.
To this. So LAB in your hair. At first I'm like, I don't know why you would do that. And then I remembered the soap and I'm like, oh yeah, absolutely. I might actually just put some in my shampoo or something. I don't know.
Yeah, or I actually just using it diluted about 1 to 30 in your water, and literally like even up, I mean literally bathing in it. But I
Yeah.
pour it concentrated into my hair and just let it sit in my hair while I'm bathing, and then at the very last I'll rinse it out. And
Yeah. Having some
Okay,
up at the
so
bath, actually.
I do have a comment
it's
about,
different than
did
soap.
you,
You're inoculating your body as well.
the thing that women don't realize though, I can guarantee you all have used, store-bought shampoos and conditioners. You were all using that.
No,
And
No.
none of you weren't using any store-bought, you don't use any conditioner in your hair? Nothing?
oh, I use avocados and bananas.
No,
I
when
have
Wendy's saying she doesn't use
Oh,
anything,
Wendy,
any shampoos or
Um,
conditioners. See, a lot of people don't think and realize that when they're actually using shampoos and conditioners in their hair, how much of that's actually going on your body. There's
Oh, yeah.
like people don't realize, like they say, oh, I take care of my skin, but they don't realize the hair, what they're putting in the hair. So like the hair products are so important to me. I was a professional hairdresser my whole life and just retired from it. So having 30 years for over 30 years in the professional industry, that's something that's really dear and I'm really proud of, the hair industry. And I've went to a direction of right before I got cancer, I was actually going into all the natural path stuff and all the making your own soaps. So you talking about homemade soaps, that's amazing. Cause those homemade soaps are amazing. I don't think I've had one that wasn't from a person that made it at home.
My homemade soaps because I've bought a lot of homemade soaps over the years, and it's, we do wash our hands a lot and I use soap for that. But just generally not in the shower on my body and things. And homemade soaps are rad and I've used them. They're, we have soap in the shower. I don't use it. But this was different. This is because even the homemade soaps still generally dry my skin. And this is like a whole different level. It's crazy. And she makes a shampoo bar as well.
That's
so,
oh my goodness. Yeah, I meant to order from her. I'm glad you're bringing her back up. I had forgotten who she was because I think you'd mentioned it before. So I'm really excited you brought her back up.
Yeah, she also apparently has a deodorant that has live cultures in it as well. And for those of us,
that too.
Yeah, for people that use lab, you can use it apparently as a deodorant, and it helps a lot supposedly. Again, I don't go down that path very much. But having a deodorant stick of some sort that has the live cultures in it seems to me like a really easy transition for people to make.
Exactly. Well, it makes sense, right? Like if they're using it for no smell pig pens, I imagine it can help for no smell human pits.
So I was looking in chat. That's funny, Drake. Oh my God. I was looking in chat and somebody said bubble party, and I'm thinking bubble party right here. So I have a ginger bug that we were going to talk about a little bit this morning as well. And, the coolest thing about this is like having a pop that never goes flat. If you think about it, because it never goes flat. It's always a live culture in there. And so yesterday I took my first sip out of this because I wanted to kind of taste it. And I realized it needed a lot more water. I put pineapple juice and some ginger bug in here. And it needed more water because that pineapple is super syrupy and it was like super sweet because I made it from pineapple from a can. I didn't actually use pineapple juice. So I'm going to, you guys can kind of listen to it. You're going to hear a little bubble. There you go.
Oh, whoa. That was a lot of bubble.
Yeah.
Okay.
Look at that.
Party.
Look at
Tara,
that.
run me through this real quick. You did that yesterday. You put the juice and the ginger bug in the water together.
No. I started my ginger bug a while ago. I have a ginger bug going in the fridge. And then 3 days ago, I put pineapple juice in here and ginger bug, and then I left it on the counter actually put it on for the first day. I put it actually on my water heater where it's really warm. And then I've left it right here, sit by my labs and kind of, do the thing by me.
So you had separation in that jar. Did it
actually
fall to the bottom? Did it go to the bottom?
No, it's actually, so when I poured the pineapple, I left the pineapple pulp in here and I also poured ginger in here. So my ginger bug had ginger, and I actually left some ginger in here. So that's why you see some sediment stuff in there. And I just feel like it's like a whole complex kind of thing. So I'm gonna pour a little bit in here. And I'm kind of calling this my virgin champagne because it smells a little like champagne-y. And I love, when I used to drink, I actually used to love to mix pineapple juice and champagne.
Yes.
And instead of orange juice. So cheers, you all. Cheers, Gingerbug. She's just turning into chat. Perfect timing. She's the one that
Great
taught me about
timing.
the Gingerbug.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
So did
I
you
am-
mix it like 1-to-1? It looked like from your, like,
no, very little.
okay, that's what I
very
was
little.
assuming, but just your finger
Yeah,
measurements.
like about this much Gingerbug was in the bottom, and then like this much 2 cans of those small cans of pineapple juice, and then I filled it up with water, and then I drank a little bit of it yesterday.
Beautiful.
So
yeah.
So it's like 1 to 4 Gingerbug to juice, and then maybe like another 5 or 6 parts water.
Yeah, and I think if you have like a different style concentrate juice, you can just do all juice without the water. So it would be pretty, it's kind of almost similar to labs. It looks like almost 1 part of Gingerbug and 9 part
110.
roughly of 110.
Sure.
And I think it matters with, and I think it matters just like you in KNF, the headspace of the jar, because it's got to create that fermentation or that pressure. And if there's too much, if there's too, like if I put this back in the fridge and it only had this much in there, and it probably would go flat because all that headspace, right? So if I want this to start bubbling up more, I can add a little bit more juice and a little bit more water, and I could have more of a spritzer, a pineapple spritzer later on. You know, I can keep doing different things to this. But this is what my Gingerbug looks like now. I just keep adding ginger and natural sugar every week. I add it and I leave it in my fridge now because it's activated. So
and then
that's
I have had some homemade soda before, and I will let people know that you should make sure that when you're adding that Gingerbug to your juice, and this is an assumption on my part, but I'd bet you dimes to dollars that this is correct. You want to make sure that cap is not on super tight because they can explode. And the homemade soda that I had, I think was made with a Gingerbug or something along those lines because it was a natural fermentation. And we had it. It was given to us by my partner's sister, and she said, make sure you put this somewhere cool. So I did. It was in the bottom of our, pantry area, which is really, temperate. It was, stable temperature. It was pretty cool. And one of them still exploded, and it exploded with so much pressure that it shot shards of glass through a wine bottle. I was super impressed and absolutely terrified. So be careful with this stuff and go ahead and make sure things can off gas.
Yeah.
How could
it's live? It's live.
Well, those were bottled. It was a different technique, and they were bottled and capped. And she told us, they can explode, so make sure they stay cool. But it was like, oh, maybe cooler and maybe not capped would be my recommendation now.
I've had exploding bottles before.
So actually, when you keep it in the fridge, it's not active, so it's not building that pressure up. So I checked that just the other day, right? Like I opened this and checked this. This isn't something this isn't like a pop. It doesn't have preservatives in it. It isn't something that you're just going to put in the fridge and forget about. This is something you check and you work with it. It's a live culture, just like you do like a sourdough bread. Anybody that does any of that, it's something that it takes time and it takes effort to do. Just like KNF, I watched Wendy, stir that OH in when I went down there to help you on your farm. You were really faithful about that. I helped you stir it. I didn't even realize there's a correct way to stir it. Like there's all these things aren't just simple, set it, forget it. We have to realize this is a lifestyle change, and it's going to take a little bit of effort on our part to do this. It's not just buy a bottle. We're making a lifestyle change and a commitment. So it takes time and love. And so.
Beautifully said, Tara. And that actually was one thing I wanted to touch on with you, Wendy, today. Just because you are sort of a scientific bent and you do value the side-by-sides, and I assume that you're probably keeping a journal. So I'd like to sort of enter into the territory where like you are starting to think about incorporating this into your lifestyle. And perhaps you're even a small grower and you just have a little home grow, but like, what do you think are some of the essential things that we need to do towards establishing a library, or, let's talk about that.
Establishing a library. Well, yeah, I mean,
applications or starting with a lab or, just, what's a first step for you?
so this is going to sound a little bit funny, but I mean, and it's not for me, but it's for people in general. The first step is check your ego at the door and don't be ashamed of anything that happens, because we've all made mistakes. I'm very vocal about the things that I've screwed up along the way. And I think it's super, super important to share that, because we learn more from mistakes than we do from our successes. And if we're embarrassed about sharing those mistakes, other people don't want to share their mistakes because they feel like they've failed, they feel like they've messed up, they're not, credible or valuable or whatever that might be. And that's where we start losing a lot of the things, because people are like, well, my buddy said this worked really well. And I'm like, well, did your buddy have a control group? Well, we don't know this, that. Well, KNF, I've had so many people approach me and say, I tried to do natural farming and I did this one thing and it was really hard and it didn't work. And I tried it again and it didn't work and it's not for me now. And I'm just like, man, I wish that was not the case. Like if you make that choice, it's fine. You don't have to do natural farming. You can do a variety of other sustainable techniques. Mm-hmm. I mean, even just as far as stepping away from, general hydroponics. By the way, this has been a point of contention with me that I've been noticing for the last month. General Hydroponics has a line called General Organics. Please, people, It is not organic. It is not organic. If it is a weird color that you don't see in nature, it's not organic, okay? It's really not. And if you want to move into real organic, real sustainable future, and let's be honest, we're not in a sustainable world. If we sustain where we are all done. We have to actually turn it around and go beyond sustainable, go beyond what our definition of organic is in the United States. We have to embrace regenerative. Mm-hmm. And if that means that you're growing in a tent in your house, you can still be a part of that movement and moving towards making it at least more sustainable and at least less dependent upon things that come in plastic bottles. Mm-hmm. And that's like another part of kind of the soapbox that I've been on lately, is that if it comes in a plastic bottle, you have to consider, where is that made? How far is it shipped? What is its carbon footprint? What happens to the plastic once that bottle is empty? And is there something you can use that is comparative that does not come in a plastic bottle? And I'll tell you right now, there's a lot of things you can use. Yes. You amend your soil with dry amendments, you use manures, you use compost, you use, there's a million things. Go drive outside of your city if you're in like the middle of Detroit, and go find a farm that's nearby. You can take a drive down a country road and find, the majority of the things that you're going to need. You can do all of this no matter where you are. You really, really can. And
you can even gather up the bags of leaves from your neighbors and simply put them in a pile somewhere out of sight, and then and so that you can even have the observation of it over a season and turn it over in the spring and discover a whole world of things that you can use just like that. So it can be super, super simple, these things we do. And
if you don't have an outside, you can still do it inside, you guys. These things don't take up a lot of space. They don't take up a lot of time sometimes. I get really discouraged when I hear people just say like, well, I can't do it because of this. And I'm like, you can. And my days of compromising with people and saying like, oh, okay, well, I guess you don't have to. My days of doing that are done. Yes, you can. You can do it. It is perhaps more
Wendy
difficult.
Still has small children at home.
Yeah, I have a 6-year-old and a 10-year-old, and I run my company, and I sit on nonprofit boards. I'm a member of our fire protection district. I do all of our, promotions and distribution. I mean, like, it takes a lot of energy. It takes a lot of time, but you guys, it's something that's worth doing, because you want to be able to walk outside in a few decades. You're going to need to do something other than growing things in a tent from bottled nutrients.
Well, that's just the reality. Here's what it took for me. Because I'm going to be the first one to tell you about any of like the first 2 years I spent trying to do natural farming before Chris Trump's class. There's plenty of failures there, but the one thing I think that it was an actual decision that I had to make in my life. I had to verbally sit down and have this conversation with myself and literally commit to the process and say that there was going to be no going back. Even if my harvests were like less than half the yield that I'm used to, yes, time and time again, I'm still committed to regenerative practices because it is literally the only way forward. So I think for all of us, it just really it's like a commitment. It's like a relationship. You're about to step into a relationship with your natural environment and your natural world. And that's going to take more than a hello, you're not really working for me right now. You know, it's going to take like a walk outside barefoot and like a looking under that log and discovering those things that your mom told you weren't very clean or whatever it's going to take. You do everything you can because you're in a relationship with the world and the natural environment. And you know, and we've got this, people. That's the other thing. In all of our messaging, I think just the fact that this works.
It works really well. It works. And it's not, once you get rolling on it, you realize it's so much fun and there's so much joy. And it's like, you know, getting up at dawn to go pick freaking pine needles in the early spring. Like people are like, oh, really? But once you do it a couple times, you're like, wow, it's so beautiful out there. Like the world is quieter, things are mellow, you know, and there's a real meditative quality to being able to do this stuff, and it brings you closer to nature. And especially for people that do live in this city, you guys are the ones that I want to encourage even greater than people like me that have it a little bit easier, because I get to connect with nature every day just by walking outside of my house. I live on, you know, a 36-acre homestead property. I have to go chop my wood. I have to go do all of this, you know, stuff that's outside.
With
so
it's just
with a chainsaw. I love my chainsaws.
There's not this chainsaw, people, that you just need to see a picture with that chainsaw.
It's amazing. Chainsaws are like a great invention. It's so much easier than an axe.
Yeah.
But you know, but for me, that is a part of my lifestyle that I grew up with. Mm-hmm. If you live in the city, like just like what Tina's saying, just making that commitment to try it for 6 months or a year or a season or whatever it might be, or just more I feel like it's kind of like when I started going to Al-Anon, and my counselor at the time, this is way back when I lived in Maui, my counselor told me, she said, I want you to start going to Al-Anon. And I went, oh, okay. And she said, and you have to commit to me right now that you are going to go 6 times before you decide whether or not it's for you. And those 6 times need to be within a month. And I went, well, that's ridiculous. Like, I'll know really quickly. And she went, no, you are making a commitment to me. This is part of the, you know, process. And I went, okay, fine. So I went, and the first time I was like, hell no. And the second time I was like, man, not really. And the third time I was like, I don't have anything in common with any of these people. And the fourth time I was like, ooh, actually, that was kind of cool. I got a new tool in my tool belt. This is pretty neat. And the fifth time I was like, shoot, I'm kind of enjoying this. And the sixth time I went, this is awesome. So I don't think it takes 6 times with natural farming, but give it more than one shot. Give it more than twice. Try a few different things and see how it sits with you, because it is something that does take a mental shift to embrace. And you're not going to embrace that on the first go if you really are somebody that lives in the city and enjoys going out to eat and is not as much of a DIYer as some of us that live in rural areas. So give yourself a few chances to give natural farming a few chances before you decide whether or not it's for you. And again, if you have problems and you have failures, please share those with the community so that we can help guide you on what may have went wrong and what to do next time. Because like Tina, I mean, I had years of failure before I took class, and I didn't even know it was natural farming. It was like random things I'd find and I'm like, this is cool, I should try this. And I'm like, well, that didn't work at all. And when I took class, I was like, oh yeah, okay, it's all the nuances and things, but there's a lot more of us.
And even then,
I still have failures. All of us still have failures. It's just part of it.
So much to learn. I mean, that's kind of the neat thing, is also to appreciate the Korean the natural farming is basically a doorway. And so is Jadam. All these things are doorways, sort of into this arena where what you do matters.
Yeah.
And that you can see it visibly in the relationships that are being garnished. So like, it's fun to start with lab because it's a quicker process than some of the IMO technology. So you kind of get the flavor of it. Do you have any sort of beginning steps for somebody in a city, Wendy, that stand out for you as far as getting in touch with nature like you suggested?
Yeah, I mean, lab is definitely a good one to kind of just get your hands involved in a process. I think OHN is amazing. It's pretty easy, but it is a little bit, it's one of the more expensive cultures to, or tinctures to make, I should say, inputs. And then just, you know, take a day. If you live in the city, like wait for a nice sunny day and take a day and go. I mean, we are supposed to do FPJ. You are supposed to, sorry, we're supposed to be telling you guys what all this stuff stands for. My apologies. OHN is Oriental Herbal Nutrient. Okay. And that's a tincturing process. So it's a bit different. We do a fermentation first. There's 5 herbs, angelica, 2 parts of angelica, and then you have ginger, garlic, licorice, and cinnamon. And it's a 3-month process of tincturing, but at the end, you end up with twice the amount you started with. So if you have a quart of each of those different herbs, you end up with 2 quarts, with a half a gallon. And together that makes 3 gallons of this tincture. And this tincture is really, really good for human health. It's great for your plants as well. It's used at a 1 to 1,000 ratio for farming and gardening. So you don't need very much to really get you a long ways through it. There's a lot of people that say, well, I live in, you know, whatever random name, Brazil, let's say, and I can't get angelica, then you can leave it out. It's okay. If all you can get a hold of is garlic and ginger, you make a garlic and ginger tincture. It's not going to be as effective as all of them, but it's still a good step. It's a good process. And it starts getting you into a routine of doing something, which I think is really important, because those routines start creating habits, and those habits start changing the way you think almost about everything.
Yes.
So like this morning I woke up and I'm like, oh shoot, I have a tiny bit of a sore throat. I have a history of getting strep throat from when I was a baby, to the point that they were like, if you get one more strep throat, you're going to have your tonsils removed. So I was just like, well, I'm moving to Maui, so that's fine. We'll just hope I don't get strep throat over there, which I didn't. But I woke up this morning slightly sore throat, and I went, okay, before this turns into strep, I'm remembering something that I was taught many, many years ago that I'd forgotten about. We have a lichen called Usnea, U-S-N-E-A. And Usnea is a natural antibiotic, and it is especially effective. And here we wrap back around into what we're talking about women and our hair products and our skin products. Women also tend to have a lot of issues with bladder infections, urinary tract infections. And Usnea is incredibly effective against those, to the point where you don't need antibiotics and it doesn't disrupt your gut flora. And as well as for strep throat, ear, nose, and throat issues and things like that. So I went out and I grabbed a bunch of Usnea and I'm boiling it down. And then I have to go get more Everclear at town today so that I can actually make a tincture, which is more effective apparently. But normally, where my brain would have went was like, oh shoot, I'm going to get strep throat and I'm going to have to go to the doctor and I'm going to have to get on antibiotics, and then that's going to kill off all my gut flora. So then I'm going to have to be reestablishing my gut biome with probiotics, and this is such a horrible process. And instead I was like, oh yeah, or I can just go look at nature and remember that all of the medical things that we have come to now have almost all come from something in nature originally. And so if we can start getting back to those processes, so take OHN every day instead of, you know, waiting till you get sick and having to take antibiotics.
Yeah.
FPJ, fermented plant juice, because I did mention that. So again, it's going to take some time and effort, but it changes the way you see the world. And especially like, I mean, I used to live in the city. I will tell you right now, I will never go back to living in a city, or I mean, I don't really even want to live in suburbs ever again. I see people with their farms that's surrounded by other houses, and I'm like, oh man, I am so incredibly blessed to have chosen to live in a rural lifestyle, because it is just so much mentally more healthy for me. And I think that as a human species, we kind of forget that connection with nature really becomes imperative with our connection with self and with our connection with how we live our lives and how we interact even with other people. I am going off on a totally wild tangent. My apologies.
No worries. No worries. That's just, you know, it's sort of like we, you know, to even just whether we're in a city or in the country or where we are, where if we're surrounded by turmoil, just helpful to sort of step outside of how we've been taught to look at our surroundings and understand that we're part of an ecosystem, that we are in essence very similar to plants. Our systems can be based on nature, and that they work because nature works. And so a lot of the things that keep us separated from nature can simply, become part of nature just through viewing through that lens. I'm kind of a city country girl, so I'm kind of at home no matter where I am, so it's like, but I know the city can be so challenging. And I mean, I'm going to throw this in there, and this is woo woo. All right, hippie alert, guys, like really, even if you're out in the city, no matter where you are, step outside with your bare feet, ground yourself with Mother Earth, and literally without your socks on, even in the wintertime, put your feet on the earth.
I totally agree. That is a huge part of that connection too. And again, for people in the city, they're like, well, I'm like, you're not trapped in the city. I guarantee you can make it outside of the city via a bus.
You can make IMO inside. You can make an IMO pile inside.
You can do that too. Or just even if you don't want to do natural farming, you should still get out of the city and go somewhere in nature. Like, I don't even care if you're natural farming. I just want you to go and hug a tree every now and then.
So we do have some chat going on. It looks like people want to kind of go down the IMO.
Did you see the question? There was one of IMO questions and stuff. Did you want me to go back and get those?
Yeah, I would like to actually talk about, because Kobe's in the room and he's talking about, we're talking about locations.
One of them was like, what was the rules of IMO 1 in the desert? That was one of the questions.
I think it's a lot about where to find things.
I love this question. I absolutely love this question, because I honestly, this has been asked so many times, and previously I'd just kind of been like, oh, I'll look the other way because I don't really have an answer, because I don't really know. But there was something, I was actually just recently introduced to a TV show, and I don't really watch TV, but somehow this got onto my radar, called Hamilton's Pharmacopoeia. And he goes, it's really great. It's so great, you guys. It's like amazing. And it makes me want to set up a clandestine chemistry lab so badly.
Community one.
Yeah. But he does a lot of talking about cactuses and things. And, and it kind of started, it got my brain rolling into this whole, okay, so a lot of people are talking about, well, I live in the desert, I can't just go collect IMO. And I'm like, we don't really have, if you live in the dunes of Sahara, you're probably going to have trouble. I don't think you're going to get a good IMO collection from the top of a sand dune. That being said, I don't actually really know. I don't know what the biology of sand is.
I don't know. I had a kind of religious expression. I had a kind of a weird, I brought up a bad word.
I got some, I can go try it.
I had an experience that taught me that, there's organisms everywhere, even in that.
Well, sure. But are they going to collect and inoculate in IMO and be beneficial? I would give it a good try. So Tina would say, go for it. I would say, I probably wouldn't start there.
Because that's all you have.
But that's not what anybody has. People aren't living in these places. This is not, it's not even a discussion we need to have, because I've been to the desert many times. I've walked through high deserts. I've walked through low deserts. I lived in Mexico for a year of my life. There is lots of life in the desert. There is still soil. It does not look like our forest soil here, but even then you're gonna have to wait for your timing. I wouldn't go when everything is dead and dried up.
Timing.
It's all about timing here. So I would wait for a rain, wait for things to start blooming out, and go out 24 hours after it rains and set boxes in areas where you're seeing, life basically, and start, you can do it that way. And like what Tina was saying, we know that life exists everywhere. We know for a fact that the desert is still full of biology. So it's going to be different for certain, but if you're living in a high desert area, that's the biology you want to bring into your farming anyway, because that's where you live. That's the whole thing of indigenous microorganism. Mm-hmm. So since then, I have been really scouring all of the social media stuff and trying to find people that live in desert areas that are doing this successfully. And there are absolutely people that are doing this very successfully in some very, very dry desertish locations. And I mean, even in Boise in the summertime, it's freaking hot, you guys. Oh my gosh, it was so hot and dry. And the very best IMO collection I've ever seen was the one we collected. Tina, I think it was the year that you were in class.
I saw Chris's face, and he usually doesn't express himself. Like, you can't just read it, but he was like a little boy with that collection. It was
amazing.
It was
that collection. And it was like, what, 100+ degrees every day and like 0% humidity. It was crazy out there.
Yeah.
And my best collections that I've had have been in, July and August. Again, same thing. We're talking 90+ degree days up into the hundreds. And it's not about heat. It's not about anything like that. Your indigenous microorganisms are out there and they're alive at different times in the year. So, just getting a lot of different collections, practicing a bunch, trying a bunch. Yes. You still have collections that don't work out, and that's just part of it. It's just,
I think I probably have success on maybe 25 to 30% of what I put out that I keep anymore.
So. Yeah, I've gotten pickier, but I've also found I have a much better success rate. And
well, I'm still in this sort of like experimental, because and also I am collecting from places like the prairie, and that's a unique lesson. So, just back to the sort of establishing a relationship with your environment, searching for that perfect IMO place is going to take, it's different. It's different in each season. It's different where you are. It's different from time to time. Like my mountain collections, I'm still being challenged by. I'm really good at the prairie now, but like whether you're gonna plant your box in, like, for instance, leaf litter, or whether you're gonna clear a spot and put it down, whether you're gonna use rice or millet, which, like all those things matter. Dappled light coming through the canopy, it all matters, right, Wendy? I mean,
maybe we should talk about, maybe we should talk about some specifics of how to collect IMO, like the do's and don'ts, because there's a lot of new people in here. Yeah. So like the do's and don'ts maybe for dry climate versus a wet climate versus maybe is there different?
For me, it's not really a do or don't, but I think we can inform on it for sure. When do you want to start tackling this one, or?
Yeah, I will, because I don't think it's that specific. I really think that it's a learning curve, and once you kind of get your groove on the curve, it gets, for me at least, and for the people that I've mentored, it has gotten exponentially easier the longer they do it.
Yeah.
And part of this too, again, like comes back to that getting in touch with nature and getting connected and grounded almost, where like I don't really even know anymore about how I know it's time to collect my boxes. I just know. There's just a gut feeling where I'm like, oh, it's right now. It's not even, I'll wake up and I'll be like, it's sometime today, but not yet. And all of a sudden I'll just be like, oh, I'm going to go out right now and go collect my boxes. And it's like 9 times out of 10, they're just, I'm nailing it perfectly. And it is kind of an intuitive thing. And I don't know why that is. But for people that are starting out, that's not going to help you, because you're like, well, great. I don't have that intuition yet. So what the heck do I do?
You gain it through practice. It's like a thing, right? You get surprised by your own level of being in tune with your environment by practicing it.
You practice it, and you don't get discouraged. You just keep going. But there's ways to shorten that curve, to flatten the curve. Ha ha ha. And one of the best ways that I know is that do not build 1 box, do not build 2 boxes, don't even build 4 boxes. I used to say 6, now I say 10 or 12 is even better, because what you can do if you can build, which you can, 1 box it's actually easier to build a whole bunch at once than it is to just build 1. So, go buy enough cedar boards or buy the natural baskets if you want, but ideally aim for 12, because what you can do if you've got 12 is you can do 3 different collection spots with 4 baskets, or 4 spots with 3 baskets. Either way seems to be fine, depending on how many good spots you can find. And if you set out 3 of them, you can start doing this. Oh, brilliant. Look, and this comes into side-by-sides, which was the other thing we wanted to talk about. So you can set up your own side-by-side experiments, and you can say, I have 3 boxes in one location. So on day 5, I'm going to collect a box. And on day 6, I'm going to collect a box. And on day 7, I'm going to collect a box. And I can visually tell which day is going to be better. Now, if I'm bringing my notebook and I'm taking good notes, which I highly encourage everybody to do, you're going to say, I used this much water and this much rice, and I had my boxes in this location, and the average temperature and humidity was this and this. Max and mins and averages is what the 3 points that I like to take. And then you can say, okay, so now I know that when my temperature was ranging between 85 and 92 degrees and humidity was between 0 and 18%, my day 5 box was on point. But when it was early in the spring and my average temperature was 55 at night up to 72 in the morning, my average humidity ranged between 40% and 80%. And it took me 8 days or whatever that may be. So you could start actually seeing the data and the correlations between your temperature and humidity and the days your box needs to be out, as well as the amount of rice versus water. So one variable only, do not change your rice and water ratios and your box collection times. But when you start getting, you can start with either one. So if you're like, I'm going to collect all of these on day 5, but this one's going to be wetter, this one's going to be drier, and the one in the middle is going to be somewhere in between those two, you can get that. Yeah. So you can start getting, this is exactly how I cook my rice. Now that I know exactly how to cook my rice, I can start getting these temperature humidity fluctuations, and I can start getting really, really good collections. And that's the way you start really negating those failure rates. You can get better successful collections more frequently because you have your data points and you know when to collect, you know how to make the rice. And those are the nuances that make all the difference between being able to, like I said, like shorten this experiential curve where you're like, okay, I mean, I took me 10 collections before I went to class and I threw every single one of them in the compost because I was like, I don't know what I'm doing wrong, but this is not what this is supposed to look like.
Exactly.
Even the cooking of the, oh, go ahead, Drake.
I was just gonna say, I love that you're touching on this, because as individuals, that's the most we can do. And like, you don't have to go out there and have some crazy background and do all this schooling and everything if you're just super interested and passionate. But what we need to do, and what we really need to get out there, and I love that you're really pushing this point, is just record everything we're doing, get the basics, the majors down, just like you said, and even the area you're in. And then there's going to be other people out there who thrive on taking all this information and putting it together and just seeing all the differences. There's going to be someone that's what they love doing, even though that's not what the general person likes to do. And we're going to be able, we were just talking about this yesterday with LaLa and Tara, we're going to be able to exploit everyone for their own areas in which they thrive. And then we're going to be able to compound the speed in which we can learn. And then we're going to have so much more, like, it's just, all it's doing is now we're just all contributing to a big study, right? And then we're able to take the results of this super widely done study and give it to people who are, I don't want to say less interested, but don't have as much time to go, to go out there and look through all this. We can have something that's more repeatable. And then, like you're saying, in certain areas, we're going to say, okay, well, at this time, at this date, with this consistency, with this kind of rice, in this area, so this longitude and latitude, it really took this time for me. And then we're going to have all these different people with other inputs, and it's going to be so easy to differentiate what's most likely going to be the best time and the best date to collect for those who don't have as much time to put into learning about it. So we can confidently say, hey, if you're in this area, this is what you should be able to do. Just write it down, and then we'll be able to take those notes and help you tailor it, and so on and so forth. So thank you very much.
Exactly. I that is exactly how we can all work together to make it easier for everybody. And again, sharing the failures. Well, shoot, everybody said day 5, but look at this. Like, okay, well, let's look now at where you are, what was happening. Like, yeah, 5 days was too long. 5 days wasn't long enough. We have a lot of people in the Facebook groups that are like, how does this look? And, sometimes it's really hard to tell. And sometimes I'm like, whoa, what even is that? And it's like, oh, I had this IMO box that left out for 3 months. I'm like, yeah. So 3 months is really way too long.
I have something to add to that I'd like to sort of get your feedback on. So I did some side by side with millet and rice, and but before I had time to go get this collection, which was a good 3 hours from me, sort of higher elevation I was going for in a pretty pristine area. So I was going for diversity. And my car broke down. So I literally couldn't get to my collection for probably, it was almost 30 days. It was a long time. Well, the rice collection got completely eaten by mice, and the stuff that was left was a little bit contaminated. But the millet was almost one of the best collections I've ever gotten. Like, and I really attributed it to the fact that it was millet that had, it might have even taken longer for the millet because it had that hard shell, but it seemed easier to sort of create an oxygenated environment for the IMO, which is what you want to do with the al dente part of the rice, is getting it so that it's not clumping together, so that you can have a nice environment for the microbes to inhabit. But I was really I'm really wanting to play with the millet more as a kind of a, I don't know, less as a strata that's less that doesn't contaminate as easily. What do you think?
I mean, I would suspect that because millet has such a hard husk on it, that it took bacteria and yeast to break that down before fungi could inoculate it. But that is absolutely just a suspicion. I wouldn't, I can't confirm that one way or another. For people that are new, we really, really don't want you guys to start with different substrates, because again, this is, we're talking about this kind of, you get to this intuition point where you're like, oh, it's done now. And if you're starting with a substrate that doesn't have the, literally thousands of years of trial and error behind it and thousands of years of credibility that this is what works, it's a short grain white rice is what you really want to start with. Can other substrates work? Yes, they can. I know somebody that used potato. We got actually asked about that a bit. And the deal with potatoes is there's too much moisture on it. So if you want to use potato, you can, but you need to cook it and then dry it first. And so that would be a trick. And the thing with the al dente rice is not so much, to my understanding at least, not so much the oxygenation, because you can get some really fluffy, fully cooked rice if you let it cool and then fluff it. But there is a moisture level. So, especially as a cannabis cultivator, we learn when you're drying properly, you want to then cure properly. If you over dry, you don't get a good cure. If you under dry, you can still get a good cure, but it takes a lot more work. But if you have it perfect, where your outer twigs are dry and brittle, they snap, your inner bigger ones are still holding moisture and they bend, that's when you homogenize everything. So if you think of your rice like you're properly drying cannabis, you can actually make that wonderful correlation of moisture, homogeneity, and equilibrium that we're creating.
That's gorgeous.
So that, and I mean, it was just like when I was taking things down the lines, I was like, oh my gosh, it's like the perfect IMO rice.
This is a great example of exactly what we were speaking about, because it's like we've got these hundreds, these thousands of years of what's gone down that we can look back, we can reflect on it, we can see what's generally going to work for most people in certain areas to some degree. But then here, now we've got someone, yourself, LaLa, who's done this experimenting, super confident with where you're at, and now you're interested about new things and how you can tweak and how we can maybe expand this. So now, as long as you're doing what you're doing and taking notes and creating more information for others to then contribute to as well, and then view upon and then work with, it's slowly going to translate to now we're going to have hundreds and thousands of years of experience on that as well. And then maybe whenever down the line, even yourself, you can say, oh, I'm noticing really solid results here personally. And then we have 5, 10, 20, 100, 10,000 people sharing the same things, writing it down, documenting it. Well, all of a sudden, maybe we're going to switch over to however many years down the road, everyone's using that method because it does seem to be working better and getting, on the large scale, better results.
And just even having those options where, people are like, well, I don't want to use rice because I live in Canada and we don't grow rice.
Because I've had a lot of people ask, like, well, what if we don't have access to rice? Like, what do we do then? So, it's a discussion.
I have people try that too, and I'm always like, I've traveled a lot in my life. I've been to many, many countries. I've been to just about every continent except for Australia. Rice is available everywhere, you guys. Brown sugar is available everywhere. I'm kind of calling, Sugar,
Okay.
I should say, not brown sugar necessarily, but dry sugars are available everywhere I've ever been. And I've been to some very, very, very poor countries. I just, again, I feel like these are people that are, feeling like maybe you're supposed to be doing this, but you don't actually want to. So you look for an
Yeah,
excuse.
you're an
And
excuses. Okay, I want
and
to bring
so,
some questions from the
yeah.
From the chat. Yes, rice, use rice.
use rice for new, but again, people like Tina, who has the chops behind her, she's got her rice game dialed in. So she's going to go out and like start trialing out millet, and it has to be repeatable. That's the other thing I want to push really hard, because it happened once. Like, that does not mean that is something that everybody should be saying, like, well, this was amazing, I got my very best collection from millet, so everybody should use millet. No. We had one good collection from millet. We have millions of great collections from rice. So if you want to try millet, do, but we need to have that peer reviewed. We need to have other people doing it. It needs to be repeatable, or it's possibly a fluke, or it's super amazing. But like, let's actually do the work to proof that out.
Totally, 100%.
LaLa, that leads into that other part where you're talking about side-by-side studies. Did you want to maybe talk about side-by-side studies?
I want to bring up some of the
questions. Or did you want to do the other one first?
Let's just bring in some questions from the chat, and then we'll go into that, because I was thinking the same thing, that we should segue into some side-by-sides. So there's some questions about the smallest size of IMO possible, up to sort of what do you use specifically, Wendy, for your size of box, and how much rice is needed to like, I've gone smaller. I've gone from the bigger to smaller boxes, or even baskets. I'm actually using baskets now. So what do you have to say about that?
I think most of us start with a large box and slowly move down into smaller boxes, because we really do want more collections that are more diverse rather than less that are bigger. But you can go too small. So, and I honestly don't know what too small is. I do know that Leighton Morrison was doing a little test with kind of just having fun with some. It was an interesting idea, but I think that it was kind of decided that it probably wasn't the best idea, which was using cardboard boxes, and he was using old cigarette boxes. So they were very, very small. Okay. Yeah, I was like, ew, gosh, Leighton, maybe just quit smoking. Hey.
Yeah. And there's things in the lignin, there's things in the wood. I mean, I did a weird box collection once, and it's really big. Oh, look at that.
That's cool.
Very cool. Oh, that's a nice size.
And I would not go much smaller than that, honestly. Because the thing is you, in order to get your microbial population really going well, it can't be too small. It's just, you're not going to get that population in there in large enough amounts and in diversity. I would not go smaller than that. And that's about half the size maybe of the ones that I do. So my boxes are built to the size of those build your own paper towels. So it's like not quite a full, it's not a half of a paper towel sheet, but it's close, it's a little bit over that. And so that's the size that my boxes are built to, because I found that is when I have a good collection, I get about a half a gallon of IMO2 out of it. And that is a good size for me, for my farm. Yeah. And it's funny, because as I scale up in my farming, I would think about maybe scaling up my box size, but the reality is I'm just going to do more collections. I'm actually not going to increase the size of that box. I might do more boxes and put more out there. And there is, yes, culturing. Okay, so sorry. There's something just came in chat about IMO during winter, and I'll get to that in just a sec.
Yeah, I'd like to talk to that one too.
Yeah, it's a good one. It's important. So
yes, Wendy, sorry, I'm not copy and pasting those in just so we can get back to them later. I don't mean you need to add them right now. I'm doing it for LaLa. So everybody in chat, if you're asking questions right now, I'm letting you know, I'm just copy and pasting them, and they'll get to them as we're going through. I don't want to interrupt people with all these. So go ahead. Sorry, guys. Go take it away.
No worries. Should we get straight to the winter collection, Wendy, or what do you think? Or were you?
Yeah, I know. I just noticed. I'm like, oh shoot. Let me wrap up the box size real quick. The other thing that's really important that people miss a lot is your rice must be at least the halfway mark And ideally we want it at 2/3. This is important for a variety of reasons, but the most important reason is because what happens is when you take that rice and you put it in its box, and everything in there is basically more or less sterile at this point. This is also why we want to use wooden boxes or these natural baskets. Natural baskets work great because you can sterilize them. You can soak them in Star San or simply let them sit in the sun and bleach out. They have a lot shorter shelf life than a wooden box does, but it's okay. Wooden boxes also need to be out of untreated wood. You cannot make these out of something like plywood. It must be a solid wood. It's fine if you want to use pine or fir. Again, you get less shelf life than if you use something like cedar. We do want to avoid redwood because redwood is highly antimicrobial, and we find that it is much, much more difficult to get a good collection because of the extreme antimicrobial nature of redwood itself. So your other tip with your boxes and baskets is that it must be untreated. So that means that if you're buying a basket from the dollar store, it may not be your best bet because generally those are treated with fungicides, and usually it's made with leaves that have been sprayed with herbicides or pesticides or strange things. So it's it's kind of hit or miss. And a lot of the people that come back with failed collections over and over again, I'm like, where'd you get your basket? And it's like, oh, Michael's, and it was shipped from China on a shipping container. And I'll tell you right now, almost 100% of those are treated with fungicides so they don't rot in the boat on the way to the United States. So you want to pay attention to where you're getting your collection box or basket from. Then you also want to make sure you're sterilizing that or getting it really clean in between your collections. And you want to have it 2/3 full. So coming back to that 2/3, why that's important. Once we put our paper towel on the top to enclose our collection, once you take that paper towel off, the jig is up. And the reason is because as your microbes are inoculating that rice, as they're making it their home, they're actually creating a temperature rise. And that paper towel is protecting that humidity and temperature that's in the airspace above the rice. And that is creating a perfect environment for the microbial habitat. Once you pull that paper towel off, that heat has lifted out, you've increased the oxygen, which generally feeds bacteria more so than fungi. You've really just kind of messed up the little biodome that they've created. And at that point, your collection is done. It's either going to be turned into IMO2 or chicken food. And I've made a lot of chicken food in the past, so don't be embarrassed about that. It's okay, it happens. But again, 1/3 airspace. So 2/3 rice, 1/3 airspace. That gives those guys enough time to create their perfect habitat to give you a really good collection.
Yeah, well said. And feeding it to chickens is great because it's also inoculating them and they're further processing it and their poop is enriched. So it's kind of like you keep processing. It's never a waste. It's always something that can be good use. So.
And then as far as collecting in the winter months in general, and this is passed down from Master Cho, is winter months are traditionally avoided. And it's got nothing to do with temperature. It has to do with humidity. So when it is, it has to do with temperature also because you don't have a lot of microbial activity under a certain degree. And I honestly don't know exactly what that is, but I know once you're getting down into, averages of 50 degrees Fahrenheit or lower, there's not a lot going on out there. Not as much, I should say.
Not as much. It's a different quality.
Yeah, it's a different quality. And when it's really wet, the problem is we get a lot of anaerobic activity.
There you go. Or facultative.
And facultative anaerobes are great, but it's not really what we're after in this case. This process is very specific for fungal diversity.
Yes.
We've also been getting a lot of pushback from people that don't believe that IMO works because it's not collecting mycorrhizal fungi, which is what plants need to communicate with. And I can't say for certain that it is or that it isn't because my microscope skills are not, they're not advanced enough to be able, it's not even my skills, it's my microscope. It's not advanced enough for me to be able to tell the difference between mycorrhizal fungi and non-mycorrhizal fungi. We have a lot of fungal diversity that occurs in the woods that is digesters, those are still great to have in your garden. It's not just about mycorrhizal fungi. It is about fungal diversity, period. Diversity. And so you need those fungal digesters in your bed still, because they will digest the plant material that falls on the ground. They'll help digest any type of other supplements that you've put into the ground, any amendments, your mulches. They're going to feed the worms. They're going to, I mean, it's all about this food, the soil food web, which includes not just mycorrhizal fungi. Yes. The other thing that I think about is that when I'm doing my collections, I'm not doing them in a location where there are no plants. I am always doing them where there are lots of plants. So to assume that the mycorrhizal fungi is not actually making it into that rice seems like a large leap to me, that as somebody who believes in science, I can't make that leap. I'm not going to go with you down the road that like there's no way that mycorrhizal fungi is inoculating that rice. I think it's possible, because that rice is still a source of food. So that fungus can actually create hyphae that is from the ground where it's communicating with the plant. And just for people to know, mycorrhizal fungi absolutely requires a plant in order to continue its lifespan. They only live in synergy with plants in a symbiotic relationship. Now, that being said, because I have a box of rice that doesn't have any plants in it, it doesn't mean that those fungi are not still opportunistically inoculating that box. That's why when we pull our boxes, we need 100%. To get it into sugar and into dormancy right away, because what's happened is the fungus that has inoculated that box, be it mycorrhizal or otherwise, have sporulated. And what they've done is they said, I had a lot of food, I'm going to make a bunch of babies. So it created a whole bunch of spores. And now you've taken those spores and you've put them into stasis. And now you're going to inoculate out other substrates with them. So, you know, and when I do my IMO3 piles, I'm always using grains that almost always sprout on me. So right. I'm kind of like going like, if I have mycorrhizal fungi in there, it probably is actually continuing to propagate in that area and create more of itself. Gorgeous. Again, I can't guarantee either direction as to what's happening. What I will say is that I'm not going to argue with you online, because the people that believe this are generally really looking for a reason to push not natural farming, which is weird to me, and I don't really understand it. I do understand where they're coming from. I'm not going to argue with you online. I'm just going to say, if you're adamant that this doesn't work, I would love to have you come to someone who has, again, really good experience. They do really good IMO collections, and let's get that stuff tested and figure out whether it is mycorrhizal fungi or not. I suspect there is a good case that there could still be inoculation with mycorrhizal fungi, but again, that's suspicion. But it's, and sorry to tangent off on that, but this has come up 4 or 5 times in the last couple of days.
It's it's really important, actually. No, and also just the recognition that we know, we don't even know the names of 5% of the microbial activity that's going on under our feet. And so there's a lot to discover. And if we just put ourselves in a learner mind rather than a knower's mind, then we can start having these open conversations where there's a possibility for something that's happening that we might not either agree with or know about, and that it's more of an exploratory. Because I mean, sometimes when I've lifting my box off a location, there will actually be hypha underneath, like almost like taking advantage of that now unique ecosystem that was created by the box being on top. And there's definitely a relationship with what's going on in the box, with what's going on outside of the box. And who's to say that that relationship isn't actually extending to the plants on that level, and that there's a full-on communication going on between the foods that those mycorrhizals are like receiving to give to the plants. I mean, it's a, you know, it's an interrelated world that we live in.
For the indigenous microorganism collection, we had a question in chat asking if one could assume the best time for collections could potentially be in mushroom, like when mushroom season's upon us, when there's a whole bunch of mushrooms that are growing and it's that season. Would that be kind of a solid time to collect? And obviously diversity is the key. You want to have multiple collections, but as far as like maybe a vigorous collection or something along those lines. Would that theory be?
I haven't actually found that to be true, because that was what I suspected at the beginning also. But the thing with mushrooms is that is basically the flower of the mycelium, if you will, right? So fungus, the mushrooms themselves are literally the bloom of the fungi. The body is all that mycelium that's and the fungal hyphae that are running through the ground. So I think it's Paul, is it Paul Stamets has, no, his is fungus, mycelium running. Who's the author of that? I can't remember, sorry. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, it is him.
That's Stamets.
So, you know, that's a great book that kind of talks about that a little bit. And there's a lot of wonderful ones. I'm actually in the midst of Mycorrhiza the Planet right now, which is awesome. But again, the point being, fungal blooms are the bloom of it. And what's happening is it's pushing towards reproductive right then. And we're not really trying to capture reproductive. We're trying to capture vegetative. So when you put your boxes out, I have not gotten a good collection when there is a lot of mushrooms blooming. It tends to be a little bit too wet out. So I've got it now where I can get decent collections then, but it was for a really long time, I always let it go too far. And so I'd come back and it was like slimy or mushy, or, you know, it had obviously sporulated out and then died back. And I was like, oh man. But for me, the best collections again have been in the middle of when it's hot and dry. And, you know, it's really counterintuitive. Some of the stuff that we do with natural farming is super counterintuitive. Take your fruit trees, knock all the soil off the roots, let it sit out and dry for a couple of days. Like, who does that? That's just crazy talk. And yet, man, it's amazing. It's like the health that fruit tree has from then on is mind-blowing. I'm trying to do a larger trial of it this year, doing a side-by-side, which part of me is like, why do I do these things when I know that I'm going to have 5 trees that I'm going to be like, man, these ones are depressing. And those 5 are so awesome over there. But
how big are these trees that you're starting with? And what are you doing? What are you doing for prep in the pit? And like, how are you prepping the soil? Like, let's go a little deeper on that one.
Yeah, I'm just, so for me, I've never really done an orchard before. I've done some studying of it, but experientially and hands-on, I'm pretty lacking as far as planting fruit trees goes. So a lot of this is me just, you know, puttering around and knowing that if I lose out on, you know, $150 worth of trees, it's not breaking the bank for me. So I've yet to exactly decide, but basically I'll be getting them late winter, early spring when they're still in dormancy. They'll probably be I'll probably either order them online. I'd like to try and support my local nurseries, but they often have really limited varieties. So that's kind of problematic for me. But I'm probably just going to do 4 different trees of a few different varieties. And I really want to get out on my farm. I want to get cherry trees, and I really want to do some stone fruit of some kind. So I might just go with plum, because plum grows really easily where I live. And then I'll run 2 of each variety. So if I get 4 Bing cherries, and 4 cherries generally have to cross pollinate. And I don't think I'll grow Bing, but whatever. Whatever cherries I do decide on, I'll have 8 trees total, 4 of each variety. And of that 4, 2 will get treated with natural farming, the natural farming methodology for fruit trees, and 2 will not be treated that way. So I'll prep my ground as you should with the fruit tree, which I would honestly have to go back into my books and look it up because I haven't looked at it. But generally you're, you know, digging a big, huge hole in the ground, and you're amending it appropriately with organic material and manures. And, you know, I have amazing native soil where I live. So our straight native soil, the testing, I think the only thing we've really been super low on is our pH is a little bit off, but not even that badly. I think our pH was 6.5 or 6.6. And organic material is low and nitrogen is low, but everything else is already there. So I'm super blessed. I don't have to do a lot other than create better aeration and better, treat my soil compaction. So I'll put a bunch of compost in it and whatnot. And yeah, and then just dig big ass holes in the ground and stick trees in it.
And so you're going to do the dry out method with half of those as well.
Yeah. Yeah. So what you do
is that going to be the KNF trial? That's what that's going to be part of it.
No,
is that
that's a whole separate thing.
Okay.
Oh gosh, but we could include that now that you mention it. That's kind of an interesting. See, but then now I have to have a control group, so now I need like 6 trees of each varietal. Well, I have enough land; I could do that. We'll have to budget.
So when you're thinking about your side by sides, like, does it sound? I mean, like that's one of the things I super respect about you is that you just sort of you have this natural affinity to doing that, and so it sounds like you're ordering your trees and planning out your side by sides as you go. So what are some of the things people need to sort of like think about or get prepared about in their minds when they're thinking about doing side by sides?
The one main thing that I see people, the big misstep, I will say, in a side by side experiment is too many variables. So people are like, well, I did this like this, and I did this like this, and this. And I'm like, okay, but you have like 5 things that are different in your 2 groups, and you don't have a control group that you did nothing to. So you really need to have a minimum. I mean, if you're going to not have a control group and you're going to say, I'm putting, oh gosh, I can't even think of anything right now. I'm using product X on this and product Y on that. Really, you should have a control group that does not have any product on it. However, if you're skipping a control group, then at least limit your variables to 1. So it's not, I used products X, Y, Z, and G on plant A, and on plant B, I used products A, B, C, and F. You now have, we don't know whether the one thing made a difference, whether the 4 things made a difference, whether there's a combination that made a difference. It's too much. So standard scientific methodology, the first rule, well, I don't know if it's the first rule, but one of the most important rules is that you limit your variables. And ideally, you limit it to 1. So that's the same thing with those boxes that I was talking about. Don't put out 4 boxes that you treated each one differently and you're picking each one up at a different time. You're either picking each one up at a different time or you're treating each one differently, but picking them all up at the same time. So limit your variables so you can have really good data and you can say, I know exactly what worked and what didn't. And it was exactly this one thing, or it didn't make any difference at all. And here's the control group to prove it.
Yeah. And if you want to do another variable, then you just simply expand it to 1 more, like you were going to have to order more plants to.
Right.
And so if you're going to, just increase your base side by side, and then you can almost include that third sometimes. Like I have one that's, a control, one that's got 1 thing, and then one that's got one thing plus another variable.
Yeah.
So that can.
And then the other thing I see that drives me a little bit batty, and this tends to be specific with our cannabis community, is that y'all treat 1 plant instead of a group. And when you only have 1, it's really hard to draw any conclusive data from it because it's just 1 data point rather than a group of data points. And this also comes down into, again, that limited variables. This is harder to do when you're growing from seed because each seed is the variable. Right. It is genetically different from every other seed. Yeah. So, if you really want to run good standardized, things, then you either have to have longer data sets and more of them, so over a larger frame of time, or you're growing with clones so that you're limiting your genetic variability of the plant itself. Exactly. So sometimes, we can wiggle those around. I mean, our full-term garden is one that is going to always be grown from seed. But that is finally actually starting. Somebody asked me about this just yesterday. They were like, what happened with that experiment where you were doing, natural farming versus Elaine Ingham style compost tea biologicals? And then my third, and I'm not having a control group where I'm not doing anything to it because that's not how farming works. And I am an experienced enough farmer to know that, but there will be a third group that will be utilizing both natural farming techniques and compost tea and compost extraction. But those are going to be from seed. So, you know, there's 96 plants in the garden. I should be able to get a decent data set on the first run, even though we will have genetic variations going on, but it's a 5-year trial. This is not something that I'm saying I'm going to do it once and just be like, yay. This is going to be over the term of 5 years, scoping the soil biology, charting the average yields, having qualitative data as well. Ideally, if I can get that rolling, which would be customer feedback. So again, when we're talking about side-by-sides and we're talking about collecting data and really creating relevant information that can help guide others, it's generally not something that happens super easy or super fast. These are things that take time, they take intention, they take good record keeping. And if it's not your jam and you're not into it, like, you don't have to. There's no pressure, but do refrain from saying, I used this particular thing on my entire crop and it was the best crop I've ever had. Well, that's great, but we don't know whether it was just a great year, it was just a great cultivar, you had better water, you had better techniques, your soil was more on point. Was it that thing? I don't know. You don't know. I mean, you can say, I had an amazing crop this year. Everything was just lined up so beautifully. I brought this new product in. I'll be using it again over the next few years to see if that made a difference. So I'm always cautioning people to be careful with your words and be careful with what you're claiming, because there's a lot of claims that go on. I mean, I just wrote like 4 paragraphs on the whole banana tea debacle thing, that everybody loves to use banana tea because originally organic farming. I suspect that I have a little bit of conspiracy theorist in me. I kind of suspect that maybe the banana company corporation like got together and they were like, hey, how do we get people to eat more bananas? Oh, let's push that potassium thing. Ooh, and we can tell them that it's really good for their gardens too. Brilliant. Let's do that. I mean, sorry. Anyway, potassium, great for your garden.
While we're on potassium, because let's just get to the heart of the matter. Like, it's like, okay, so one of the things that I've had a hardest time with when it comes to like recipes is like, all right, so cannabis needs a lot more nutrients than let's talk about potassium. Like, how are you finding cannabis in relationship to calcium and potassium, and what are your sources? And like, help us understand what we need to do, because a lot of this is coming from people who are needing to increase their yields at that critical flowering point. So can you help us understand a little bit more, since you've had some experience there, Wendy?
Yeah, I want to put the banana to rest just for a minute here for all y'all and tell you why it's not your best choices. Okay, it is high in potassium. I'm not going to say it's not. It is. It's a great source of potassium. It's a great source of magnesium. It's got a lot of wonderful things in it. We know this. Is it magnesium? Sorry, not magnesium. Oh gosh, I'm forgetting now. I just looked at the whole nutritional breakdown of a banana. Yeah, there you go. But the thing is, and people are like, well, once you add the peel, it adds a ton of more potassium. It actually does not. There is 422, there's 422 average milligrams, I think, per banana is what it is, maybe. And then when you add the peel, it's 42 grams per kilogram that is existing of potassium in the banana peel. When we look at parts per million, there's you can look up dynamic accumulators. There's some really wonderful things out there. I personally have access to a dynamic accumulator chart, which is a living document, so it can be edited and things, which is why I don't pass it out anymore, because people accidentally screw it up. But you know, when we look that up, and I was like, all right, let's look at a banana fruit versus other fruits, because we're just talking about fermented fruit juice with natural farming or organic farming makes a banana peel tea is the other thing that people are loving to use. And the reality is bananas are, I think it was 19,000 some odd parts per million of potassium. When you want to look at a cucumber, it's 72,500. Tomatoes are also up there in the 50,000 plus range parts per million. Beans are in that realm. There is bitter melon, which is way up in that, tens of thousands parts per million. All of them way, way, way outperform bananas. So if you want to make a tea, make it out of cucumber. Make a cucumber tea, don't make a banana tea. And the other reason too on this is because this is not just about what can I buy at the grocery store that's better than buying something in a bottle. If that's the best route you can do, fine, go do a banana. However, the carbon footprint of that banana, unless you live in Southern California or Hawaii or India or Mexico or somewhere, I don't even know if they grow bananas in Mexico, actually. Chiquita, they must. But you know, those tropical regions are where bananas are grown. So unless you live in a tropical region, Tara's cracking up, unless you live in a tropical region, you are not probably having access to fresh bananas. The other thing with bananas is that they are heavily pesticided. One of the reasons why they're not included on these, like, well, it's not on the Dirty Dozen list and it's not on this list. It's because you peel a banana. So they don't include fruits that you peel because that is strictly a human health situation. We're not talking about pesticide use in general. So bananas get peeled, therefore they don't get included. Third thing about this, and if you're like, okay, then I got an organic banana, well, there's still a lot of copper products that are used as fungicides that are acceptable in bananas specifically, and other just organic farming in general, but they're used very much in bananas because bananas are hugely susceptible to fungal diseases. Yes. Those copper products are created and manufactured in a lab. They're not naturally occurring. Copper sulfate, copper methoxy, I'm forgetting what it is, a few others. Okay, so now we have a manufacturing process that has to go into creating the fungicide to put on the banana that's getting shipped across the United States and into your store. You can see how this starts to add up really, really quickly. Yeah. The third thing to really put your mind into when we're talking about bananas is that a lot of banana farms have very, very poor worker conditions. Yeah. So now we're getting into some fair trade, and we're starting to talk about, it's not just about whether or not you should use a banana on your cannabis. This is a global impact that you make when you buy bananas. And if we have other choices, if you're like, I like bananas because of the potassium, wonderful. Let's look at the other options we have. Natural farming.
I need to do it.
Yeah. So natural farming.
Honestly, yeah, I totally, Wendy, I love that you just brought that up. Like regenerative 100 miles, right? Like that's kind of like, you know, we're just trying, like, I'm just trying to throw that out there as like sustainably in a lifestyle commitment to change. And that's, I need to look at that. I eat a lot of bananas. So that's something I need to look at other sources like potatoes, right?
Yep. Yeah, I mean, and I do buy, I'm not going to lie and be like, I've never bought bananas and I don't buy bananas anymore. My 6-year-old loves bananas. So I do buy them for her. Like, yeah, I do. I'm not going to say I never buy bananas, but going out and buying a banana for my cannabis, you know, it's just to me, not a good choice. So as healthy as I like to eat, I still indulge in gummy bears now and then. I still don't make 100% perfect lifestyle choices, but I do know that when it comes to things like farming, I get to choose to make a choice that is better because I have this knowledge of saying that, again, potassium. So natural farming, we have WSK, water soluble potassium. Traditionally, it's made with sesame stems. We don't usually grow sesame, so that doesn't work for us in the United States. Sunflowers are a great potassium accumulator. So you can use, ideally, any part of the sunflower will work, but the heads as the seeds are forming is a wonderful, wonderful high level of that. You make it into a biochar, it makes it water soluble. You add it 1 part of this biochar to 10 parts of water. You let it set for a week to 10 days, strain it out. You're good to go. You have a potassium supplement. You can use it as a foliar. You can water it in. It's amazing. You can take your sunflower stalks and take that biochar and put that directly into your garden beds. This is all.
What's your ratio? And how, sorry, go ahead, Jared. I just have a burning question.
I was going to say, can you store it all and continue, LaLa?
Start
it all. Say it again. I'm sorry. I totally.
Start what all?
No, store it. Like once you've made it, yes. This is a product you can store. Yep. You have to make it each time.
Nope, shelf stable. You can store it as biochar. You can store it as once it's soluble, once it's solulized in the water. It is shelf stable for as long as it sits there. Keep it in the cool and the dark, even though I highly doubt it would impact it if you didn't.
And if you've done your biochar properly. So there is a methodology to doing the char so that you're actually taking to carbon all of the organics, because if anything of that is in there, especially with the bone, you will have a contaminated collection. And I had a hard time getting a non-contaminated for a long period of time with eggs. So, but anyway, that's probably just me.
No, it's not. No, I'm with you on that. The eggs are hard. And what I finally found is that I had to do, and this is not water soluble potassium. What we're talking about now is water soluble calcium.
We're going to jump back to potassium.
Yeah. But let's, since we talked about the eggs real quick here, the water soluble calcium is made with eggshells. And the trick to that is rinse your eggshells right away. So you crack your egg, use your egg, rinse your eggshell. It gets all the protein out of there. And then you put it and dry it. And then when you're carbonizing, you're not carbonizing your eggshells, but you are cooking them and you're breaking down those bonds a little bit more and making that calcium more bioavailable to the, or soluble to the water, I should say, not bioavailable. And then as you're cooking your eggshells, you winnow and you'll get the rest of the membrane off, and you'll get a really high quality water soluble calcium that has a much longer shelf life. The last one I did properly is going on 2.5 years now and is not stinky or gross at all.
Okay. You just threw down the gauntlet for me, because I'm trying to find. Okay, I'm on it.
So take your time with it. Get all the proteins off the egg itself, because that's where I kept messing up, is I was not rinsing my eggshells. So the dried egg white protein will crystallize and you can't get it out. It doesn't winnow. Nope. And it doesn't burn out. It turns into glass. It's weird. It's disgusting. And it ruins your water soluble calcium and makes it crazy stinky within 3 months.
I know, exactly. So, cloudy and gross, and you're like, ah.
And it smells like death. It's horrible. It's horrid. Works great as a deer repellent, though.
See, we have the experience. We're down the road a little bit, and we're laughing about it because we're learning from our mistakes, and it's a glorious path of failure. I just love it.
It is. I love that. It's a glorious path of failure. It is, and it leads to amazing success. And I know exactly how to do it right because I did it wrong.
Right. And you put so much time and love, and it's like,
the rancid WCA. Y'all, when you make it, the first time you make it, go ahead and like shoot me a picture and tag me, because I will laugh with you, because you'll be like, oh, it's so gross. It's nasty.
The tag Wendy. I'll just peek in on her thing.
So
go back to potassium though. We can't leave that. I need it. From Wendy, I need some help on the potassium levels. And the calcium, I'm going to be very specific. What are your ratios of calcium and potassium and whatever else you're doing for flour from veg through transition into flour? I want to know the dirt, girl. Come on now.
So in general, I'm not using water soluble potassium, WSK. I don't use that in veg unless I notice a deficiency, which I generally don't.
I never use it.
Okay. So yeah, in veg, I haven't needed it. Water soluble calcium and water soluble calcium phosphate I have used in veg, but it is in response to noticing deficiencies.
Okay.
And this is something you can't teach because it's not on a schedule. It's not like once a month I add 1 to 1,000 of WCA, water soluble calcium. Okay. It doesn't work that way. It can work that way, and it probably wouldn't hurt your plant too much. But the thing that people have a really hard time with is understanding with natural farming, because we use such dilute, minimal amounts. They think that you can't overdo it. Exactly. And you really can. You really can. And I have burnt things every time I've gone off of what my gut has told me and been like, I'll just add a little more. It's like, dang it, I knew not to do that. When we say 1 to 1,000, it's 1 to 1,000. When we say once a week maximum, it's once a week maximum. You can go less often. I joke around, and I've told Chris and a few other people that are doing consulting and things, I'm like, all of us need to get together with a type P recipe, which is placebo, and it's going to be plain water. And anytime you think you need to put something on more often, you put on type P.
Oh, that's so good.
So, because there's something about cannabis where people just feel the need to constantly do something. And I'm like, just stop. Today is a don't do it. Don't do anything day, but you're not going to listen to that. So fine, just go
on
put a type P on there.
On all levels. Cannabis has us on all levels there, because like one thing is one stress, two things is two stresses, and it takes 1 week for each stress. So you just compounded your problem by like exponentially. And talk about overuse of natural farming techniques, and then you're like stimulating them with enzymes and hormones and like, and then it can get crazy tunes like really fast.
And then you think you've done something like wrong and you have deficiencies, so you pour more and more and more on, and it's like, yeah, no, please stop. Just stop. It's too much. And we know it sounds like not very much, because 1 to 1,000, you barely put anything in, and you're like, oh God, is this right? This doesn't seem right. Like, how could this actually be affecting it?
How can this work? Right.
But it works because of the synergistic levels of things that we're putting in. So it's homeopathic, but it's all working synergistically. So you have these hormones and enzymes from your fermented plant juice that is stimulating the growth of the plant, which is opening the stomata, which is allowing it to absorb everything you put on. And then you have the actual nutrients that are in there, which have been micronized by the fermentation process, by the microbes that have actually eaten it down into this extremely bioavailable form. And I mean, it just goes deep into this whole like science, like woo-woo science craziness level that we're absolutely trained doesn't exist or work with traditional NPK. And as soon as you get away from thinking NPK and you start thinking IMO and soil health and, micronized minimal inputs, MMIs, micronized minimal inputs, I like it. As soon as you start going into that.
Is that an acronym that has been in existence, or did you just fucking
No.
Where's that one coming from? I need to have more Zooms with you, apparently.
Yeah, as soon as you start doing that, it changes your whole ideology on it. And all of a sudden you're like,
conversation about that sometime, dude. Now you've got my mind a little blown, and I'm like, I miss you already, and you're not even gone. Hell, girl.
Yeah, I love this stuff. It's fun. I listen to things. I'm like, oh, that's brilliant. We should write that down. And I forget. We have scribes.
We have some scribes. Girl, okay, so Emma, all right. Let's I got too excited there because of the MMI. Now that's all I can think about. What did you do to me? Okay. So what do you want to talk about now, guys? All right, let's take a hit. Is it 4 o'clock with you, Wendy? Is it 4 o'clock time for you?
No, we're just barely 1 o'clock here. We're gonna barely go on. We're 10 to 1. Yeah, we're gonna get 10 to 1. Let's have a nice dab, and we have quite a few chat. Quite a few people. Say hello to chat. Thanks for tuning in, everybody here today. We appreciate you. If you think someone might enjoy this information, please remember to share it out. We'd appreciate that. It helps get the cannabis information out and build the community. And if you got any more questions, we've been posting them in chat. I hope we got to them. If we haven't got to your question yet, please put it in here. We want to get to them.
She hasn't gotten to my question yet.
Okay, go ahead.
Wendy, can you give us a breakdown on potassium and anything else that you're using foliar to help me in bloom? Because I need to have an answer.
Okay, so. And I do have to say, I've got about 10 minutes left because I am co-hosting with Joe McGinn on Clubhouse with the same continuation. So if you're on Clubhouse, you can find us over there from 1 until, I think he has us on for like 3 hours, which is crazy to us.
Okay.
And Tina, awesome. I accepted. You're in there, so
I know I saw that.
Pop in.
I'm going to.
So for potassium in bloom, WSK 1 to 1,000 And in general, again, I really try to read my plants, and
Yes.
again, we have most of that stuff available in our soil. I am in the process very, very slowly of setting up an old indoor and running that so that I can have an R&D. So it's not huge. It's like, you know, what we used to call 6 lights, square footage wise. That's like, I don't even know, 20, 40, 120 square feet maybe. So it's very small. It's not going to be huge. We'll probably run 100 to 120 plants in there, 1 to 2 cultivars. And I'll be setting that up as proof of concept, just for myself to be able to run some of these experiments inside, because I do consult with indoor cultivators, and I've had some really wonderful successes with them doing a lot of this stuff. But for me, I'm not going to encourage them to do some of the side-by-sides and experimentation that I want to do, because I won't encourage other people screwing up their crops.
I'll be speaking to you privately about some of these things then.
Yeah.
How that's
so as far as WSK goes, though, once you move into bloom out of transition, you can add that at 1 to 1,000, in my opinion, to all of it throughout. Don't go over 1 to 1,000. Don't go over more than once a week. Once your buds are at about a quarter size or about halfway into bloom, whichever happens first, you want to transition out of foliar and into soil drench. You can stick at that 1 to 1,000 ratio, though. You don't need to increase it. You just have to have more on hand, because you use more if you use it as a soil drench than you do as a foliar. That's why we encourage foliar feeding with natural farming. It has nothing to do with the fact that it works differently or better or anything else. It's just the fact that you utilize a lot less of your inputs because the amount is so much less in general. So when I'm foliar spraying 5,000 square feet of outdoor light deprivation cannabis, I'm using maybe 30 gallons. When I'm soil drenching 5,000 square feet of outdoor cannabis, I'm using, 500 gallons. It's a drastic increase in how much inputs I have to use, but the ratios stay the same. And then what was the other one? WSK and
or just calcium, and like it just
calcium.
You're like, and mostly it's more like, for me, my question is more around timing, like because you have some of these things at very specific times for the type 2 and the type 1, and I just thought maybe there was like to increase flower sort of yield, to extend the calcium into more of the life cycle or the nutrient cycle than had been suggested.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's hard for me to really speak to that because each environment is different, right? Your soil dictates a lot of that. So if you need more calcium, I highly recommend you actually go ahead and pulverize those eggshells and put them into the soil itself.
Oh, good. I was wondering about that. Oh my God. Yeah. Would you come on sometime and have a soil conversation?
Yeah, would love that.
Okay, sweet. Let's shelve some of this, because that's where I'm at, and it's kind of neat because I have a lovely indoor grow. I'd love to share with you and have this conversation a little bit. So let's do that.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I would love that.
Okay, cool.
Looking forward to that one. Getting down and dirty with you women.
Our barefoot troll feet in the mud.
One quick last question from chat that's been asked a couple times,
yes,
and
it has.
It up a little bit quicker here. As far as organic, quote unquote, foods that are bought from the store, are there any that are actually organic that would be fine to use for your worm bin? Is kind of the main question.
Yeah, worms are really great at kind of dealing with just about anything and everything. So like I put everything in our worm bin. I don't buy non-organic food, so that doesn't go in. But as far as it goes, for the most part, you're using this at diluted ratios. It's not really like, I'm not sure what's going on. I'm going to have to look into this because this has been popping up all over the place where people are asking about what you can and cannot put in your worm bin as far as organic foods. And as far as I'm concerned, you can put them all in there.
I do too. I do too.
So I don't know where this is.
I would say, right? Yeah. Diversity. We talk about diversity everywhere, right?
Yeah, so I'm not sure where this is coming from, where there's some ideology that we should not be putting organic food scraps in our worm bin. But as far as I'm concerned, go for it. I've done it my entire life. I've never seen anything detrimental come of it. But I figure there's got to be something happening that people are talking about this. So I could be wrong on that.
Kind of like composting, bringing in anaerobes, because, you know, maybe if you're putting your bones in there, you know, that brings in certain contaminants that are harmful.
Sure.
And just like this whole
it doesn't work the same when you're doing natural farming as it does traditional organic composting methods.
Yeah. Yeah, I just I don't really, I'm not sure again where the thought process, where the fear is coming from on that, whether there's something making its way through the airwaves that's scaring people off. But if you bought it from the store and it's organic, put it in the worm bin. It's being processed differently. It's not it's actually being processed, so you're not like soaking it in water the way you do with bananas. The whole banana tea thing is like any pesticides, herbicides, or fungicides that are on that banana peel have now been put into solution in your water. So, you know, it's not the same thing as throwing that into your compost bin. Again, a lot of this comes from becoming a local thinker and eater instead of something that is going from far away. My opinion is, if I can buy something non-organic that was grown from the farm right down the road, and I know that they don't have organic certification, but they still have good farming practices, I would rather buy from them than from the grocery store that got from some massive distributor that was in the middle of America. I mean, when I lived in Hawaii, the Dole pineapples that were grown on the island were shipped to the mainland for processing and shipped back to the island for sales. It was inane. So like, this is the mentality of things that we need to be thinking about, not just what we're eating and how it was grown, but how are the conditions of where it was grown? Where did it have to travel to get to me? What are the worker conditions? What kind of company? What am I doing with my money? What am I supporting with my dollars?
The reason we care how far it travels is because the nutritional value of what we think we're getting is breaking down the longer that food travels, right? I mean, really, that's the key ingredient we got to remember.
That's a huge part of it, for sure. Yeah.
And just remember, everybody, we are an ecosystem, you know.
Thanks, Wendy, for joining us today. You have an awesome day, and we'll have you back again, and we're going to share everything out, and we'll see you again. Love you, girl.
All right. Love you guys. Thank you so much for hanging today. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. Oh my God. Thank you.
Bye, girl. LaLa, thanks for this awesome interview. You always are bringing the heat today, man. I love these guests we got going on, and I love these conversations. Do you want to continue and sum it up a little bit, and then we'll talk about maybe what we got coming on in the near future, or maybe go ahead.
Yeah, let's do it. I'm in the afterglow. Sorry, I'm just.
That's okay. That was amazing. I love the conversation. We've been talking quite a bit off camera, and we've been talking to Preston some more. He wants to come on. We've been talking to James. He wants to come on. James Driscoll, if you guys haven't seen that interview that we did last Sunday, that was a pretty good, awesome video. And guess go check out all the LaLas every Wednesday. We're going to be hanging out here with LaLa. So
I think next week, I think Microbes by Marco said he can come on next week. I haven't confirmed that completely, but I'm pretty sure that he'll want to come on. Cool. That'll be a fun conversation.
Wonderful.
He does
so y'all bring your questions and be ready. Let's get this chat a rocking and share with one another all we can, right?
I wanted to do a shout out to the chat, dude. It's the best.
Our chat's awesome
ever. Like, everybody,
we have an awesome
so
chat.
Respectful. Everybody's so like helpful. Yeah, let's do that.
Chat rocks. Woo! Cool. Let's take a dab to the chat. Cheers, y'all.
Chat.
And you know what? Cheers to y'all, because we're at 2,000 subscribers. I'm announcing it. We're at 2,000 subscribers, y'all. Thanks for subscribing, and I really appreciate all the support. This just really makes our day happy, doesn't it, y'all?
Yeah, and it increases the message. And if you feel like this is an important message that needs to get out to the world, then I think the only way we're going to do that is through support. And the support you give on YouTube happens to be a like and a share. So, like and a share.
Cheers.
Cheers. I love our community. Just saying.
We have a great community. Okay, what do you got? What do you got finishing up here, LaLa?
Love you, the American one, Ginger Bug. Just everybody out there. The American one is always coming on saying something. We just love you all. Thank you, Tara, for providing such an ecosystem where we get to come back and revisit and talk and check in and like see progress and watch labs and make labs together and pop seeds together. And it's just, cool. Thank you.
You're welcome. And Drake, thank you as always being my co-host. I appreciate you help screen sharing all the time, bringing up all that information for us as he's just taking a last dab. I'll let him finish that out. See if he has any final words, any last, words of advice, maybe what he's got going on in his grow or anything he wants to update us on. I don't know.
Write it down. I love what Wendy was saying, one thing at a time when you're making changes. Find a process that's trusted, that people respect, that's got a good rep with the community. Start there and then start making your own tweaks slowly. And that's how you'll probably have the quickest route to success and the best concept of what you're doing. Because if you take that, like you said, check your ego at the door and just listen to kind of lots of things that are out there and then kind of use your own best judgment to figure out which people are maybe out to lunch and which people are on the more correct path. And don't be disrespectful. There's always a little bit of something good for the most part to grab from everyone. But I love what she was saying, just write it all down and then we're able to use it in the future. And it's a contribution that we can all make.
So very well said.
If you're like me, maybe type it.
You're awesome. Well, thanks you two for tuning in with me today, and thanks everybody in chat, and for those that you will watch this video after we are off the air. I appreciate you tuning in. We really love to hang out here live, and we love to answer your questions as we're going. It really makes the show, and we invite more of you to hopefully join us on live, and look for us live next Wednesday, of course, with LaLa. Might be live on Saturday and Sunday. I don't know. We have guests coming and going. I don't like to announce it till I actually have the numbers and set times. So y'all have a wonderful day. As always, peace and love. And I wish you a lot of healthiness.